There we go. Streams.
Can you see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, I think we're live. All right. Hi, I'm Esme Addison, and I'm joined with Mia Manansala. I'm so grateful that you've got it like spelled out phonetically, like on your website.
Yeah, it's a common problem. So I'm like Manansala.
Manansala. Got it.
Yeah.
No more hesitation. So we are chatting tonight. We are both authors of Cozy Mysteries, and we have lots of things in common that we've discovered in other panels, like witchy things and herbal tea and mystery and magic. So we're going to talk about that kind of stuff tonight. And I'm super excited to hear about the tradition of witchcraft in your culture and and talk about tea and all that kind of good stuff. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. And why don't you tell everybody a little bit about your series? And
yeah, sure. So outright, as Mia said, so I'm Mia P. Manansala, use she, her pronouns, and my debut novel, I never have it ready, but I'm like, I just try to do this. So my debut novel, Arsenic and Adobo, came out earlier this year in May. It's part of the Tita Rosie's Kitchen Mysteries series, which follows a Filipino-American family in a fictional Midwestern town. The protagonist is Lila Macapagal, a young Filipino-American woman who, grew up in a small town, had big dreams of making it in the city. She couldn't hack it for various reasons. So she came back to kind of regroup a little bit, but at the same time, save her aunt's restaurant, which is under threat of closing. And of course, she gets wrapped up in a murder mystery, the victim being not only the town's like really vindictive food critic, but also her ex-boyfriend. So that's really fun. And I just today got the past pages for book 2 in the series, Homicide and Halo Halo. And for those of you who are not familiar, past pages are like practically the last step in the process. There's so many steps, which I'm sure Esme knows, in the process of publishing a book. The past pages are where everything has been revised. The copy edits, which is like checking grammar and logic, that's already done. And now it's been formatted and it looks like a book. It looks like a real book. And it's like, amazing. So that dropped in my inbox today, and I'm very excited about that. Homicide and Halo Halo is book 2. It comes out in February 8th, I believe, 2022. And it follows Lila and her crew. It's been a few months after the incidents of book 1, and the Miss Teen Shady Palms beauty pageant has come back.
I love
which is
beauty pageant.
Yeah. Oh, which that's also some things I remember we were talking about. Like you also have, so we're gonna have to talk about that as well, if you don't mind, if we have time.
I don't mind.
Because there, if there's something that both small towns and Filipinos loves, it is definitely beauty pageants. And this is an event from her past that she has strong ties to and very strong feelings about. And so that's my series. Arsenic and Adobo is book 1, Homicide and Halo Halo book 2.
So I failed to mention my book, but so I write the Enchanted Bay Mysteries series, and this is the second book in the series, Hex for Danger, and it is about, and just ignore the German Shepherd rambling around in the back. He's actually looking at me like he knows I said German Shepherd.
Oh, I just realized, is that like the model for the dog on the covers?
Well, you know what? I knew that I wanted a German Shepherd, so I put a German Shepherd in the series. And so in the series, it's a girl and it's a short hair, and he's a boy, long hair, but it's pretty similar. I mean, I actually think that this looks like a long hair.
Yeah,
hair is a little fluffier, and the coloring is similar. So
yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, your cover model in the background there.
My cover model. But so it's about a woman who she lives in New York, and she's got family in a little coastal town in North Carolina. And she discovers after her father dies, her mother died when she was little, and she kind of decides to just kind of change her life, quit her job, and she reconnects with her family, who has always been a little different and eccentric, and her father never wanted her to know anything about them. She discovers basically that they are descendant from a mermaid. And that sounds really crazy, but I try to write it as realistically as possible. So they are perceived as water witches in this town, and they've lost the ability to shift shape, I can't say it, from mer to human. So they're just women, but they can command the water, they can heal, they're telepathic, and can do some other things like that. And so there's mysteries, there's a mystery ensues, but that's kind of the setup for the series. Anyway. So let's talk about herbal tea, because I follow you on social media. You know, I know you're on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Mm-hmm. And you have a lot, in addition to food that you post, you have a lot of, and candles, because I like candles too.
I was actually going to say, I was like, I really want to check out that mermaid candle you've got in book 2 in Hex for Danger. I was like, that sounds delightful.
So let's talk a little bit about herbal tea, because you talk a lot about herbal tea on social media. And I know, are the teas that you like, is that something like from like Filipino culture, or is that just like herbal teas, or do you have a family history of like teas as medicines, or like just tell me a little bit about your experience?
So it's actually strange, like Filipinos, like history with tea, like because of colonization, like Spain colonized it for over 300 years, and then also like the US for that. So there's actually, compared to like most of Asia, the Philippines does not have a strong tea culture. It's a lot of coffee, particularly instant coffee, which is why, like in my books, people are gonna be like, "You're at a restaurant drinking instant coffee," which is funny because like my copy editor for book 1 actually made a comment about that. She's like, "That doesn't seem believable." I'm like, lots of Asian restaurants, particularly, they really, really like their instant coffee, but if there is like tea, it's usually not like black tea. It is more like herbal teas, like bayabas, which is like guava leaf, which is something I'm learning a lot about right now. A lot of fruits, obviously, like dalana, which is like a more citrus kind of thing. Bolangay, which I think is known as like, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like moringa, moringa. Like I know it's like used in a lot of, so like malangay tea is pretty, so it's really interesting because it wasn't until recently, I'm pretty sure it's like someone I follow online, where I realized like, oh, herbal tea is like medicine, and it's also like magic in some, like in the ways that people think of magic now, right? Because like we use the term like witches a lot, and it's just a really easy shorthand, like for those who are not aware, like in the in my books, spoiler but not spoiler, like there's the my protagonist starts something called like the Bruja Cafe, like, but it's like a pun because it's a cozy. How can you not have puns? So Bruja means witch in both Tagalog and in Spanish. In the cafe, it's spelled like BREW, hyphen HA. So trying to play with like, it's a coffee shop. It's a tea place, but it's also, these are women of color who make magic. Right, because my protagonist is Filipino American like me. Her best friend is Pakistani Muslim. Their third business partner and her best friend's girlfriend is Mexican American, and they all have these traditions that they pull from. Particularly the Mexican American. So she is introduced in book 1, and she gets better developed in book 2. I like her a lot. She's actually someone I'm trying to include more of. One of the things which I think maybe because you also have like a lot of really strong, like I hate the strong female character, but you do, right? Is that a lot of times they can overshadow each other because they're all so strong, but in different ways. That it's really hard because if I'm writing, it's Lila's story, but her best friend Adina is such a strong character. She can easily overtake a scene if I don't pull her back. And Elena, who is the third partner in the thing, she is a quieter, more calm, reasonable one, but she also has really strong opinions, and she can also really quickly overtake a scene. So like finding that balance is really interesting. And also just finding, so sorry, to go back to the original topic, which is like with the teas, that is something I've always been a tea drinker, but like, as a little kid growing up, we were like, it was like Lipton tea bags. And I'm sorry for all like
It's
my
not just
the
in the South.
international people, the especially those in the UK, like I didn't know what an electric kettle was until I moved abroad and lived in the in South Korea. Like I made tea in a microwave. I'm sorry, it that's what happened. But like as I got older and started learning more about tea, that's when I got, I started learning about like, oh, it's, like green tea and herbal teas and things like that, and I really just like fell in love with them.
Do you use any herbal teas like for any medicinal purposes in your life?
I mean, like just really basic things like, so like chamomile, obviously, to help me kind of relax before bed. Um, Peppermint tea is one of my favorites. It's really good if I have like maybe like an upset stomach or I need some like soothing. Ginger tea, like that. Oh, that's another like Filipino thing, like we call it salabat. It's just a general ginger tea. Like at its base, it's literally just like ginger boiled in water. But you can always like juice it up a little bit. Like I always add honey, calamansi, which is like our citrus. Sometimes I'll add cinnamon, which is not very Filipino, but ginger and cinnamon go really well together. That is used for like a host of things. It's stomach aches, like flu, fever, congestion, all those kinds of things. I love, like, it's about that time actually, the changing of the seasons. I'm very sensitive, like to the weather fluctuations. It's probably not as severe where you are, but like in Chicago, literally I woke up and it was like 55 this morning, and then the afternoon it was like 78. So like it's so ginger tea kind of really carries me through like those big fluctuations where I'm feeling like not my best.
Right. So when you read A Spell for Trouble, all the teas resonate with you? Like all the use of herbal teas?
Mhm. Yeah, it just seemed really cool, because um I love the idea, like the blends and like how, because it could be really basic. Like I love like a really good oolong or a really nice Darjeeling, but the fact that you can just take a tea and then add in dried fruit and herbs and transform it into something different, right?
Mhm.
Something that's both delicious and good for you and can kind of cure certain things. And just like the intuition and like the knowledge and skill that's necessary for something like that, I find fascinating.
Yeah, I do too. Like tonight, I'm actually drinking. It's a kava kava blend. Do you know kava kava?
Hmm. Ooh, that can be a bit of a hallucinogen, couldn't it? Sometimes, yeah. Ooh, I guess we're both partying tonight.
No hallucinating tonight. It's so I have had kava kava, like the kind where you like I order it from like special and it's like it looks like dirt in a pack. I've had that, but so this and that's really strong. But this is actually like I think it's like I can't remember the name. It's like you go to the grocery store and you get it, and
Oh, okay.
but it's strong. Like I use it for like stress. Like
Okay.
at the end of the night, it's like, do I want wine? Do I want beer? Or do I want this?
Hmm.
And so that's what I'm having right now. Because sometimes I'll get like when I've done so many of these, but I just want to be really relaxed, you know.
Hmm.
So I usually drink kava when I'm, I'm doing my interviews, uh,
Oh.
virtual chats and things like that. But this blend, but it doesn't taste good. This one tastes good, but like the if you
Hmm.
get like real kava kava, it tastes
Yeah,
like
it's
it tastes
dirt
like
water.
yeah, so bad. But this is really good. It's mixed with like cinnamon and some other flavors. So it's very tasty.
Okay, yeah, because like I tried it. Like the reason I know about it is like, so I mentioned South Korea. So I spent 3.5 years teaching English in a small town in South Korea, and one of my like acquaintances there, like we were. This is gonna sound like so ridiculous. Like we were like on a camping trip, and he was like, "Oh, hey, I brought this kava." He was South African. He was like, "Yeah, we use this for, like he was like these various things." He was like South African Indian. And we were just like, we were a bunch of 20 somethings on the other side of the world on a camping trip. We were like, okay, yeah, why not? Let's try this. And I was just like, this does not taste good at all. But it was a fun experience.
And the thing about it is, if I don't know, I don't really feel like this like kind of store package version does this, but the real stuff, it numbs your throat.
Mm,
So it's actually good for like a sore throat. Like if you're, I've actually used it for that. I had a really bad sore throat in the past, and I didn't drink it for the calming, but it was like my throat was so sore. It actually
mm,
hurts. So it's kind of interesting. But yeah, I've always been into like natural medicines. Ever
mm,
since my 13-year-old, when he was born, we were in Japan, Okinawa, and he was allergic to everything. And that was the first time I ever started caring about like just food, like organic versus not organic, natural versus not, you know what I mean? I was just like regular, not regular, you know, just like whatever. Just, I mean, eat healthy, but not really thinking too much about it. And I really got kind of paranoid about like all the medicines I was giving him and started researching things. And I was like, discovered the idea that I can actually create medicines from herbal teas, you know, or
Mm-hmm.
from essential oils and things like that. So I started making eardrops, you know, like with olive oil and garlic and oregano, which is like one of the strongest antibacterial
Mm-hmm.
oils, you know, just things like that. And I just kind of became really fascinated with it. Like, you know, of course, you still have to like sometimes you have to go to the store, you know, the drugstore.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you got to go to the doctor and get a prescription for something, but I always like to try natural things first.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was really, really happy that I'm able to incorporate that into the Enchanted Bay Mysteries.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if I told you this or not, but so originally when the idea was pitched, it was supposed to be the Enchanted Apothecary. So
Oh, okay.
the focus was really supposed to be, even though they were mermaids, which I was trying to downplay a little bit because no one
Mm-hmm.
does mermaids in a cozy. um, I really want to, you know, I want each title to have to do with like an herbal thing or a remedy or a potion or things like that. So, but it was tweaked towards the witchy, which, you know, I'm
Mm-hmm.
still able to do like all the things that I want to do. But yeah, so I'm really excited about that.
Yeah. Yeah, so we were talking, so yeah, just for people, like, I don't have anything like official yet. So, it was just that we're talking about the fact that like we are both interested in this, and it's an idea that I've had that I've wanted to play with. Because in the Philippines, like we have, they're called like albulario, like herbalists, basically, right? Which again, like some people think of as witches, but they were the
Wait, say it again slower. What's the word?
albulario.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Like herbalist, herbalario, kind of a thing. And again, a lot of, they are like natural healers, right? Like, because it's interesting, again, like I am very new to this, so if people out there have like a deep dive into like Filipino history and she's like, she doesn't know, I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm still learning, right? Because like we actually have like various divisions, like there's like the babaylan, which are like the actual shamans, like where they consider that there's a connection between them and the spiritual world, but that's a completely different thing. And then there's the albalarios, which both actually still technically exist now, just in different communities. And then there's albalarios, which are the herbalists, which are like natural, the apothecary homes. They have the herbal remedies and things like that. And so I started learning a little bit more about the albalarios, and I'm just like, oh, that's like really cool, because you could go either way, right? You can just be like, this is just like a regular, real life. And they just happen to run an apothecary because they are invested in natural medicine and herbal teas. Or you can go like, the way that you did, where it's fun, where it's like they have this and like a little bit of a paranormal element, right? Because Filipino folklore is so rich and there's just so much out there. And I'm at that crossroads where I'm just like, what do I want to do? Do I want to go like the paranormal route, which involves like so much more research, or do I want to keep it ground, because I mean, I think you're doing really, really well where like it's paranormal and it's cozy, and like some people don't like the blending of genres, but I love it, and I think you've been doing pretty well. But it's some people are like, oh, I don't know, that's too different, there's too many things. So if I keep it grounded maybe in the real world, it might be an easier, so it's just one of the things that I go back and forth with, because I love both ideas.
Have you thought about like your author brand? Like, do you know, like what kind of writer do you want? What do you want to be known as? Like, do you want to have some, magical realism, like, what I mean? Or do you just want to be traditional, not paranormal or magical, but still bring in things like that?
I mean, like ultimate author goals, it'd be like Neil Gaiman, where he literally writes every age category, every medium, every genre.
Right.
But his voice is still distinctly him. Like you pick something up, you're like, oh, this is a Neil Gaiman, so like he's written for TV, he writes for kids, he's written graphic novels, he's written for adults, he writes fantasy and horror and a touch of lit fic, like mythological, so like just all across the board. But there's anything you're like, oh, that doesn't sound like him. It all kind of really ties together. And for me, I would just, central to that is kind of like my kind of exploration of like the Filipino diaspora and queerness and how it all kind of ties in together. But I don't necessarily want to be chained to one thing, right? Like mystery is like my number one love, but
One genre.
do I only want to write mystery forever? Do I only want to write cozy mystery forever? Not necessarily, right? Do I only want to write adult cozy mystery forever? I mean, like I have one book out in the world, so it's really hard because I feel like there's just still so much for me to learn, so much that I want to do and see and try to challenge myself.
Yeah, I feel the same. I have other ideas and things that I'm working on that aren't specifically cozy mystery, but it's still my voice. And I feel like, publishers may feel differently, the marketing feel differently, but I feel like my readers would follow me. I think like anyone who reads like any of my books, they're gonna like everything. I did, you know what I mean? Like there's still some similarities between, whatever I write, whether it's paranormal or not paranormal, because I have some ideas that aren't, but yeah, so we'll see. I'm like you. I mean, I've got 2 books out now, but the second one just came out in July, so I still feel very, very new, in the industry. But it's exciting, to see where we go from here.
Yeah.
As authors.
Yeah. I mean, especially for both. I mean, like, both of us debuting in a pandemic. I just feel like there's so many, I don't know, just so many feelings about this. And I don't know if that affects how you write. Like, has it changed the way you write or the way you think about story in any way? Like the events of like the world, as they're happening right now.
How are you putting anything from the world into your stories? Or are you just kind of keeping it?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely not. Because it's cozy mystery. It's considered an escape.
Yeah.
I think for me the way it's because it almost seems contradictory what I'm about to say. So like one, I know I said I don't want to write cozy mystery forever, but right now I think it's what's best for me, just because like everything around me just feels so like heavy that I need the lightness. That because you live in your story for so long. Having that like lighter humorous headspace makes things a little bit easier for me because I can escape into it. But at the same time, and this is in my author's note, so I say
that was quite an author's note you had there.
Yeah. Well, I have another.
What am I about to read? But then it was fine.
Yeah. Well, in book 2, like I also have another author's note, just because I want people to be prepared, and I say, it's still a cozy mystery, right? It's still humorous. It still has a very happy ending. There's still no gore or anything like that, but it is a slightly heavier in tone because, I wrote it in 2020. And so like obviously how I was feeling kind of spills into my writing. And also, like, to be honest, like my protagonist Lila, the story takes place a few months after the event of Arsenic and Adobo. And we write these books as standalones, right? We should like I could pick up a Hex for Danger, never having read, was it A Spell for Trouble? And I would still be able to follow along. And it's the same with my series, right? You could pick up Homicide and Halo Halo, never having read Arsenic and Adobo, and you would get it, right? Like we do enough to ground you in the world and to get to know these people. But at the same time, these life-changing events happened to this young woman, so that there's no way it couldn't affect her in some way. So in book 2, there are like ripple effects of the events from book 1 and how they've touched. It's only been a few months since then, right? And I know it's kind of escapist fiction, but it also feels, one of the things that kind of is so strange to me about cozy mystery is that like from book to book everyone's just like do yes, I found a dead body, yes, I was almost murdered,
back to making cupcakes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, her life is on track. She's got this new business, her things are finally settling down, she's got love in her life, but she's still going to be feeling the effects of, so that is like, so when I say like the pandemic itself has not made it to the pages, but like some of the heavier feelings that I experienced and of course my protagonist's experience did make it into the pages. So like, just a warning, people, if you are looking for like pure lightness, that might not be the best pick. You might want to wait a little bit. It's, again, still light and humorous, but there's just tinges of the effects there.
And I think that's okay. I mean, the thing that I like about cozy mysteries now is that they're it's changing very slowly, but you can find whatever you want. It's not just
Mm-hmm.
one thing, not one certain kind of character, one age range, and you can find it goes from light and fluffy and laugh out loud funny to kind of serious. I like the diversity of that. Because sometimes I like reading cozy mysteries, but sometimes I don't want like a talking animal, or I don't want, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
like da-da-da, I want something serious, but I still want a cozy. So I like that about your series because it's, and like I said, that when I read that author's note, I was like, what am I about to read? But it was like, it wasn't anything that I was, it was fine. Like I didn't even need the note. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
for me, it was just like a traditional cozy. But
Mm-hmm.
I liked it because one, it's outside of Chicago, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like, I guess I read mostly, small town in the South. And there's always a kind of maybe like rural setting. So yours was not,
Mm-hmm.
it was still small town, but it wasn't like a rural, but whatever. And there's still like, Chicago was kind of looming in the background. And it was more, I don't know, but it just, I liked it a lot. And your main character, she's younger and it's very diverse. I loved everything about it. Love the
Thank you. Thanks so much. Yeah, I think like what you said about cozy mystery, it's like I feel like when people hear cozy mystery, their mind only goes to one particular kind, right? Because there's such like a stigma, I want to almost say, and it's so much, like it's not as diverse in like people who write it and the people within the pages as I would like, but the topics, as you said, the tone, like those kind, like the themes, that is like it really is such a wide variety. Like sometimes, like as you said, like maybe I just want to laugh and that talking cat will get me there. And sometimes I'm just like, it's really not hitting. I need something with just like you want heft, but you don't want like depression. Right. And so and those exist. There really are plenty of cozies out there tackling heavier issues. And I just said with the author, so the reason I included that author's note is because, well, one, I had a sensitivity reader going of it, and then I was aware that um, there were going to be quite a few readers going in who are not familiar with mystery in general or cozy mystery. So, because for me, I say it in the author's note, I'm like, you know, I read so many mysteries, like of all kinds, and so like for me, those tropes, like, oh yeah, this is very typical. Like I'm not really doing anything that outside the box or that, wild. But if you are not familiar with some of these tropes, like, like the corrupt police or that or this and that, then you pick it up and you're just like, oh, I wasn't expecting that. You promised me Hallmark with dead bodies. What is this going on with this, and I particularly because as I meant, like a lot of like Filipinos and Filipino Americans of the Filipino diaspora will be picking it up. And like that's one of the wonderful things. People like I've got a message, they're like, I've never read a mystery in my life. I didn't even know what a cozy mystery was, but your book sounded a lot of fun, so I picked it up. And so it's for people like that
right.
who,
Don't know
you
the
know,
tropes of cozy.
like they look at the they look at the bright colors. I also have like a cutesy dog on my cover. They see that, they're
Right.
probably going to expect a certain lightness, and
Right.
then oh, like
Yeah.
I knew there'd be dead bodies, but I didn't expect certain other elements, and so like that's who it is for.
I had a little bit of that. So in my series, the main character Alex is always at odds with the policeman who is also
Mm-hmm.
or the detective, and like he's a jerk, it's sometimes right. And I had some of the comments were like, I don't, it was very like anti-police, but you know what I mean, kind of like what's going on in the world. But I was like, I don't think they knew like that the trope in cozies is like, so either you're working with the policeman or you're against them and constantly butting heads. And so my
Mm-hmm.
main character Alex is constantly butting heads with Jack, right, to the point that some people were like, I hate him. Like he's like, get him out. She shouldn't be in a relationship with him, that kind of stuff. So but that was
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of interesting the way people, view what's happening in the world and then look at a cozy. Because I had never
Mm-hmm.
thought about that. Like I didn't view that his character as anything as just being like it's kind of a plot point, right? Like, because she has to have some sort of challenge and whatever. But I thought that was kind of interesting. What
That,
feedback I got.
I mean, like there's so many people, like what is the, role of, crime fiction in like the world that we currently live in, and that's one of the things I had to, so like one, yes, the antagonistic detective is a trope, which is like one of the reasons I included it, but I also had to, be real, like, so my protagonist is, again, like I said, a Filipino American woman, um and she lives in a predominantly white town. And so her interactions with police would probably be different than, maybe like the average cozy mystery protagonist who tends to be white, right? Because I have certain feelings and interactions that I've had with law enforcement that kind of, color the way I feel it. And it's one of those things where like, yes, people, like I understand that there are individuals who are wonderful people and like that, but like as an institution and as a woman of color, particularly a woman of color from a lower income, I was born and raised in a lower income area that was majority Latina, like Hispanic area that was over policed. I have different feelings and images and experiences than many other, traditional cozy writers would have. And it would be, even though we're supposed to be keeping it light, right? Even though it's supposed to be escapist fiction, it would not feel real for her to not have at least some realization
Right,
of
trying to
how,
figure it out.
yeah, like anytime she interacts with the police, she's going to have maybe, like there was one part where like I had to, and my sensitivity was like, oh, it's a little bit unrealistic. I was like, oh, you're right. So I had to add where like she was getting really heated during a particular exchange, I think during the interrogation scene with Detective Park. And I had to have her realize like, oh, I'm going to come off as aggressive. And so she has to kind of like literally lean, hands up, lean back, like, no, like I'm temper her tone, change the way she talks, be careful of her body language, things like that, which are like small things, right? It's nuance, but it's things that naturally run through my head, and other people that I know's head. So I had to include those things.
Yeah. Well, I thought it was, I thought it was good.
Thank you.
I thought it was all handled well, and yeah.
Thanks.
I'm looking forward to the second book.
And yeah, and as you said, like people are having trouble with the like now she's in the relationship with the, like, so in book 2, again, this is not spoilers, it happens like in the first, Detective Park, who was like an antagonist basically in book 1, right, is like buddy like like he was already a family friend, like, so right, for people who haven't read, he was very friendly with her aunt Tita Rosie, who runs the restaurant that she's come back to help with, and then there's tension there because he cares for her aunt, but he feels like he has to do his job, and then so there's a back and forth. And then in book 2, he's more of an ally, because again, in his head he was doing his job, he realized he was wrong, he cares about this family. So people are gonna be like, wow, that's a switch, but like
Yeah. So speaking of your second book, I know that there's beauty pageants playing. Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So then why did you decide to add that to your second book?
So I personally am not into beauty. Like, I'm not super against them on principle, but like I've never gotten the fascination. And it could just because like my mom like will watch it, but she was never really like into that kind of thing. But like I know so many other like Filipino where like it's like an event, like you could, like some people have like Oscar viewing parties, like, yeah, for the beauty pageants, like a lot of people have those. So it's a big thing. And I was just, well, one, I mean, like so much drama, I was just like, I was like, ooh, it's like Miss Congeniality, but like, right, Drop Dead Gorgeous, like those kinds of things where like the drama and conflict is already kind of baked in. But also like, I always wonder like what it, because the Philippines in particular has this huge fascination and they've won quite a few titles and things. And so I wanted to know what the big deal was. So I actually did research into that. And like part of it, kind of like worked its way into the book. So not to simplify it too much, but like the basic one of the common themes that I saw was that it was a chance for a young woman who kind of came from nothing to really elevate herself and her community. Because in the Philippines, like being a beauty queen, you basically become like an activist as well. Like you are a community, so like you give back to the community. You are supposed to have some sort of like agenda and way that you help, and so like it's just, it puts you on the stage, and it gives you back so much. So like seeing like, oh, that makes sense. It's like you have nothing but like your looks and your intelligence, because like most of these women are really, really smart. Like a lot of the last ones, I was like, oh my God, you were like a law student and you had this and you had that. And I was like, wow, this is fascinating. What made them become, it's like, oh, I mean, in some small way, the money, or I shouldn't say small way. Like, I mean, for a lot of people, like your family needs that, right? But also it's a stage to get your point across. You know, some people do, it's like, well, I wanted to draw attention to X issue, and this was a way for me to get in front of lots of people. And so I was like, oh, that's, I never thought about that, you know, how it just elevates you. And so, you know, in the book, I made it part of my protagonist's her mother's backstory. So like her parents are deceased, which is part of like the tension, because her mother is a deceased beauty queen who used to push her into lots of pageants when she was younger. And her mother was originally from Tondo, which is one of the poorest areas in Manila, in the capital of the Philippines. And so I'm like, oh, like what kind of mindset would a woman like this have? But sorry, now it's my turn, dog's turn.
That is your dog and not mine. For
Yeah. Like what kind of mindset would she have? What kind of dreams and ambitions would she have for her daughter as well? To push her in a certain way. And so, you know, so part of it was like paying homage because like my grandmother was from that area. So like the idea of, you know, coming from extreme poverty and finding a way to like come to, and even if you're, you know, like you're just like working class, middle class, it's so much more than you ever dreamed of back when you were there. It really kind of helped me inform who her mother was, and then her mother's impact on her. Because just because you mean well, you know, good intentions don't, they only get so far, right? So
yeah. And so the reason we kind of brought this up, so I did a pageant, but I didn't win. There's really no story there. But I used to love beauty pageants. Like we like in my family, we would sit down and watch them, you know. But it was
okay, so you get it, yeah.
I do, but it was like it was another time, like Miss USA or Miss America. You know, it's just like this beautiful. It was just this thing, you know, and I don't know. So I did a preliminary for the Miss America, but it was like Miss North Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember like just like preparing and getting in shape, and I did like a monologue from Shakespeare, just like ridiculousness, you know, whatever. And it was fun, you know, and then that's it. There's nothing else. But that makes me really like I love that you put the beauty pageant in there, because it's very interesting. You know, like the women that are in there and their backstory. Then there's always, like you said, there's going to be some kind of drama, and who knows, there could be secrets. I mean, that would actually probably be a great backdrop for like a psychological thriller. Actually, you know, you could do something. Yeah. Like that. But I think it's kind of interesting.
I actually like, I wish I could have delved into like the pageant dynamics more. So with book 2, I mean, like in general, I find character driven things much more interesting than plot driven. Like I feel like those two things should be entwined. But again, it might have been because I was trying to work things out, but like I find myself getting really, really into like the relationships and like the character like interactions. And my editors, bless them, they are so wonderful. They're like, you know, this is fascinating, but it's a mystery, and you're gonna have to like, you know, do some investigating. I'm just like, oh man, they're so right. And so, you know, it's a shame because I have such a fascinating world. Like in my head, there were so many things I wanted to happen, but I had to, you know, do what was best for that particular story, you know, to keep the pacing right and keep it moving forward. Which it's such an interesting world. Like, how long did it take you to prepare? Like, I'm like, again, you know, I'm not like poo-pooing. I'm just like, it never would have occurred to me, you know, like I played basketball when I was younger. Like I did not entertain beauty queen aspirations, you
Right.
know.
It was like 6 months prior, and it was
Okay,
like,
that's not too bad.
yeah, nothing crazy, but I did like work with a consultant that,
Mm-hmm.
you practice interviewing and talking
Mm-hmm.
and answering questions and walking, all that kind of stuff, etiquette and um but yeah, and then it was fun. Like even like the events around, like the pre-events where you kind of meet,
Mm-hmm.
hang out with the girls, and you had like social things, and so it was a fun event. And I do think it was probably the first time that I had to really do like public speaking. So, I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
do feel like even like the training for it really helped me because I became aware of like how my image in public and how how you stand. And like, of
Mm-hmm.
course, I knew how to do those things just from having a Southern mom who was gonna sure I had good manners and that kind of stuff. But it was the first time I was really aware of, just how to act in public and how to talk
Mm-hmm.
and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I think the experience served me well.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things, people want to disparage anything that young women care about, right? Like again, like I was one of those people where I'm just like, oh, it seems so frivolous, and then like you really learn more about it and like why people do it and how, and it's just like, oh, like it's work, and it also, like you said, it prepare like things that you don't even think about, like poise and public speaking, that things that are so important later on. Like people, there are people who would rather die than do public speaking. Like that's like little, like the number one fear. Like they're more afraid of public speaking than die. And then the fact that you have that, you're like, oh, that is such a useful skill.
Right.
And just like, being able to carry yourself calmly and coolly, like in the face of like a lot of tension, like, whew,
Right.
I
Like
wish I was better under
you have
pressure.
to walk in heels and a bathing suit across the stage and be like calm and collected. Like, so if you can do that, like what else? Nothing phases you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Like I can barely like handle walking across like flat ground, like barefoot without like tripping and hurting myself. So like, kudos to y'all.
Yeah. And I couldn't do that now. I would not get up on the stage and the bathing heels, nothing.
Oh, I want to be part of the meeting.
Yeah. Anyway. So let's see. Back to the idea about the bruja.
Mm-hmm.
You have like do you have a real idea? Like, do you have an idea that something you're really thinking about, or is it just kind of?
I do have a general idea. And so like the thing that's kind of stalling me out is do I keep it grounded in everyday life, and do I turn it like paranormal? And also just because like I'm trying to do a lot of research, because like it sounds really fun, but at the same time, like I recognize that I have to be respectful, because these are people's beliefs, like it's not like people who are like, oh, it's like mythology, or it's just like, no, people true, like this is an important aspect of our culture. There is a history involved, especially through the colonial, like, you know people died because they were trying to practice their way of medicine and their way of life and their way of religion, similar to like the indigenous people here, like with like, every influencer like knows how like smudging with white sage, but they don't recognize that like the US government tried to stamp that out and would literally put to death people who are trying to carry on these traditions. It was very similar in colonial era Philippines, right? These are not like fun things that are just like window dressing to play with thematically. They are deeply rooted in our history.
Right.
And as, and I realize that's like we, again, those are two contradictory things. It's like, I feel like you can kind of marry both, right? It can be like a fun commercial idea, but you should do, and by you I mean me, you like I need to do the research to understand how this works, because these are real things that people practice now, and they've been practicing for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And so like there's I actually have it like behind me. Let me make sure, like, let me see if I can actually stretch. So like there's two books, and there's our other books, but like two in particular. Like, so there's one like it's called like The Way of the Healer, The Way of the ancient healer. So sacred. So again, sacred. These things are sacred. Certain plants are considered sacred. Philippine ancestral traditions is one of the things I'm reading from. And I mentioned earlier Babaylan, which are basically like our shamans. So it's like Babaylan, like Call of the Indigenous. So they're not, it's a cozy mystery series. It's not going to be a textbook, right? It's not going to be a primer, but at the same time, I don't want to be like, oh, it's just like American, it's like Hocus Pocus, but make it Filipino. You know what I mean? It's not, it's not Charmed, but make it Filipino. I mean, not necessarily. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like yes and no. If we're going to be flippant and pitching it that way, you can say it, but there should, I personally feel like it should be grounded in some sort of understanding.
Yeah. I think it's kind of like with, I feel like silly saying this, but like with my study of mermaids, like I have been studying, like I have done a lot of research because so with the second book, it actually kind of goes to like a mermaid gene has been discovered. Mm-hmm. And like I did a lot of research on like genetics and like sea creatures and fish, and like to see what kind of what kind of traits could a fish or a sea creature have that the women could have. Like I wanted to find like a scientific basis. For example, like they can emit like a ray of energy from their from their hands or something, and so it's like an eel. Like eels have electric charge. Or there's different types of creatures that do that. Fish have a heightened sense of smell, so that's in the first book. So everything, even if I don't always say this is a real thing that I researched and found, I try to make sure that everything is actually authentic. Like if this really happened, what would these women? How would these powers present themselves in as women, and what would be based in?
Yeah, I remember you saying that in an earlier talk, and that's why they made me excited to talk to you, because I'm like, oh, that is like such a fascinating way to start, because I will 100% admit it. Research is one of my weak points. Like with Arsenic and Adobo. So like I did that thing where I was like, oh, I will get the story down and then research later, because I didn't want to keep stalling, right? I didn't want to give myself an excuse to not keep writing forward, which like most of the time works, but not if a major plot point hinges on something you should have researched, which happened to me with like the first iteration. I wrote half. I sent it to some beta readers, one who was a retired lawyer, one who was a pathologist, so she's like in medicine. And I was like, hey, what do you think? This is early stages. Should I consider to have legs? And they basically came screaming at me like, oh my God, this is so illegal. Like no registered nurse would do this, who with any sense of ethics would do this. Like this is, they would get fired immediately. And I was like, oh, I can't do that. Man, I really wish I had researched that before I got so far. So I had to like reconfigure a ton of things. And as I said, like it's very, like I have these books and it's very slow going through these books. But you said research is like one of your favorite things. Like you really, like, again, like you said, it sounds silly, but you tied it down into these like really grounded, realistic approaches, which I find fascinating.
Yeah. It's just, I guess, you mean if research is fun, then it's not work, right? And I will research, I'll read things, and a lot of times I want to find ways to put things into my stories that I've learned about previously, but I have discovered like some new things that I'm like for example, I read about there's a specific gene that causes fish to become bioluminescent. They glow in the dark. And I was like, oh, I gotta put that in the book. Like, women, there's gonna be a reason why they can do that or something, and it's gonna be because they have the same gene, and I've got to find the name of it or whatever that this fish has. Because now scientists have found a way to take that and put it in plants, or they can put it into other things. Like there's a lot going on with science and like genetic splicing and just like creating things that I kind of want to tie into. And I would say it's a little ambitious because it is a cozy mystery, but it's what I mean? It was like, I want to put this stuff in there.
Well, that's why I think like your series is just so much because there's so many like again, like sometimes like a straight cozy mystery is just what you want, and that's perfectly fine. But I feel like people like you who just include like these layers. Because I didn't know about the Mermaid of Warsaw. I didn't know that legend. I didn't know, like there's a huge Polish community in Chicago, right? So like I'm familiar with the food, but I'm not familiar with like a lot of the other more cultural aspects. And I was just like, oh, this is so cool. Like even in the beginning where, like oh goodness, I'm trying to remember. I mean, this is like really early where like they're having like that committee meeting and they're talking about like the importance of the shield. And I think I want to say is it sword or spear? I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then someone, the committee head is trying to be like, oh, that's really violent, this and this. And then like, no, it's an important part of the legend, right? Because she's a protector. It's not, and then there's just like so many aspects to it. And I was just like, this is so cool, and I think that's like a really funny thing that like you can pick up a cozy mystery and you're like, yes, I get to solve this murder along the way. But I also learn about like, I don't know, knitting patterns. I also learn about like do-it-yourself soap. I learn about, like, Polish like legends. Like it's so cool how you kind of wove it. And it's not just like oh, by the way, here's something I mentioned. Like it's integral to the story.
Yeah.
Right. The things that you drop in there. So like we're learning these things, but they're actual plot points as well. And I was like, oh, this is so cool.
Yeah. Again, I try to really think like realistic because, I look at that myth and it's like, I'm trying to figure out like, where did this myth come from? And why does she have a sword and shield? Like, you know what I mean? So I'm like realistically, why would she have that? And what does that mean? You know what I mean? And so we have this image of mermaids, like, glitter and like, and it's like, but this one does not have that. It's like, why? You know what I mean? So that's a part of her genetic like legacy to these women is that they are strong, independent, powerful, protecting women. That's part of Alex's character arc that she kind of has to step into like her genetic legacy. But also I want to explore like why is that like when I went to Poland, when I went to Warsaw and I saw the statues everywhere, and it really is like there's some that are huge, like 12 feet, 9 feet or whatever, really big ones. And it's like why does this mermaid have a shield and sword? I get like I'm just like the writer in me is like I got to figure this out. I don't know, but it is fun to like incorporate these things into a cozy. And like I like as a reader, like I said, I like reading, it depends on my mood, but for writing, I don't like, for me the murder is like the least important part. I can do a cozy without the murder. But have a mystery. So that's what I don't think I could ever I had an idea for like a straight cozy, but it's like it's not, as a writer, it's kind of boring for me to just there's just a murder. Like I gotta have a bunch of other stuff in there. And so that's why I really enjoy writing the series because it gives me a reason to research and I can put in some interesting stuff and I can teach stuff, I don't know, but it's fun. What did you think about like the Haitian? Did you
because her friend Celeste, right? Yeah.
So this was something I hadn't discovered where I didn't know about. So one of the characters is Haitian descent. She's part Haitian and Polish. And I wanted to bring in Mami Wata. So in my discovery, not my discovery, but as I researched, and I already knew this, but it's just interesting that every culture has mermaids. Every culture has mermaids. It's like how, why? And so I wanted to bring in more than just the Mermaid of Warsaw. I wanted to kind of, because I want to show at some point that's going to be part of the story, like why there's mermaids everywhere. How did that happen? And so I wanted to bring in, and I also wanted to bring in a one of color, just to show that mermaids are not just like one thing. They don't look like one thing. And just mermaid Africa has like a huge like heritage in the Caribbean, Asian, like everything, Babylonian. But anyway, so I knew that I wanted her to have like a Caribbean history, a Caribbean ancestry. So I literally Googled like Caribbean in Poland. I just want to see if I could find a way to like really link them together. And I found the story about how a Polish legion of soldiers was sent to Haiti for by Napoleon,
Mm-hmm.
to quell the rebellion that the Haitians were had started for their freedom,
Mm-hmm.
and they end up flipping and helping Haiti fight against the French.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the many of that legion, Polish legion, stayed on the island. And I was like, okay, that's how I can tie, Caribbean and Mami Wata to Poland, because like literally there's even to this day, there's people that are descendant from Poles in Haiti. And like,
That's
they,
so cool that you just like Googled, like, I wonder if I can find a connection. And then you're like, oh, like there is this like real, like historic connection. And I finally like, I mean, like, well, especially what's going on in Haiti now, but I mean, like just history of Haiti is fascinating. So like my day job is like, I work in youth services at the library. And currently we're doing this thing we call weeding, where like we go through our collection to see like, okay, like this is kind of outdated. We don't really, we can get rid of it. And so like I was in charge of the bio section of, and so I was just reading like I read like, oh my God, I can't even count how many bios like I read. That were written for kids, and I read like Toussaint Louverture's, by like talking about that, and like so like that was mentioned in there. So like as I was reading,
really?
I was
Okay.
just like, oh, hey, that's so good, because like it
Yeah.
was mentioned. And again,
Mm-hmm.
like so, FYI for those of you with children, like picture book bios are fascinating. There are so many really cool, really interesting people that I had never really thought about or even heard about, that like I saw these, and it's so accessible. And like, like I, as a soon to be 35-year-old woman, was reading these picture books like, oh, this is so
Yeah.
cool.
Even
Learning
adults.
about Toussaint, like Haitian independence and all that, and how like that, like it was briefly mentioned, but it was mentioned.
Yeah.
Because obviously like Napoleon Bonaparte was like a huge part of that. So yeah, so just like what, like that also gives me hope. Like, can I just Google random things and hope I can find these connections for story plots that I want?
And I didn't think I was gonna find anything. I was just like, because I was like, I'm gonna make her probably Trinidadian, because I
Mm-hmm.
have a little bit of Trinidadian heritage. I was like, this will give me an excuse to research some stuff. And I really thought that's what I was gonna make her. And then I found that I was like, okay, I can't do that. I have to use this somehow.
Oh,
So
bless the internet.
yeah, because I would have never found that.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but it was very widely known in the past, and learned
Mm-hmm.
a lot of old articles and things about it. So it was really interesting. But yeah, but I just it's fun to create cozies that are entertaining but educational, whether it's like herbal teas or lessons or whatever. So and also but also sharing cultures.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know anything about Filipino culture.
Mm-hmm.
What I know, I learned from your book. You know what I mean? But it's like it's a great entryway for people that want to learn about something. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? It could be an entry like I mean, I think a great way to learn about culture, any culture, is like food, for example. That's
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the easy thing. But it's like you can read about another culture, and I love that there are so many culturally diverse cozies coming out right now,
Mm-hmm.
because like we were saying earlier, you have a stereotype of what cozies are like, but
Mm-hmm.
it's changing. It's
Mm-hmm.
like you can read about different cultures, you can learn about different things. And not to say that that's like the best way to learn about our culture, but you know what I mean? But it's kind of like,
Yeah.
for example, I had to go to a writers conference in Idaho, and I found a cozy that was set in Idaho to learn about it before I went. You know?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just saying, like, it's a nice kind of way to like. And then once you read it, then it's like, oh, I want to read about, like, I want to try these foods,
Mm-hmm.
or I want to learn, like, I want to learn more about this language or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. I don't know, but it makes things more accessible, I think, for people that may feel like there's a reason why something may be more difficult than it should be. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't mean like me specifically, but for other people that may think, I want to learn about something, but that seems too difficult or it's too far away. Well, you just read it in a cozy mystery.
Mm-hmm.
How difficult can it be?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Cause I mean, it's like I have like mixed feelings about it. Like it's such a strange question, when people ask me like, oh, what do you want people to learn about Filipinos from reading your book? And I'm like, I wrote a murder mystery. Like, it's not an instruction manual. You know what I mean? It's not like a history text. It's not, a cultural anthropology. It's a story about a woman who happens to be Filipino, and that obviously, influences her life, and there's a lot of things in there. But at its heart, it's, like a woman, like the struggle between generations, the struggle between, people's expectations versus your own, dreams deferred, shall we say. So there's like a lot of things. But at the same time, like you said, food is, I feel like, the easiest entryway, right? Because like everybody's got to eat, right? Most people enjoy food and learning about different foods and trying different foods. So that's like a really easy way. Um, and even though that seems very surface level, different people from different cultures know how to. So like one of the most like touching like reader interactions I've had in recent memory is like I did a library talk like not too long ago, like with people joining in, and a woman who was originally from Cameroon, right? And you wouldn't think, oh yeah, Cameroon and the Philippines, so similar, right? But she was reading it, and I felt like, wow, this is a woman who really, really got what I was trying to say, right? Because I was born and raised in Chicago, right? I am not an immigrant, but I was raised in an immigrant family because my parents and my grandparents, all of whom I grew up with, were immigrants from the Philippines. And in our house, and for many households, right, a plate of food is not just a plate of food. And I tried to convey that, I mentioned it like with the Lola Flor, which is her grandmother, right? It's a tangible connection to her homeland where she hasn't been to in how many years. It's culture, it's history, it's love, right? Because this is a family who is not physically affectionate. They do not say I love you, but they show I love you through service and care and in the food that they serve, right? It's a way of connection, particularly if you come from like a poor area. So, as I said, my grandmother, my maternal grandmother was originally from one of the poorest areas in the Philippines. So like the care, like what food means to her was different than what food means to me. And so like the various like ways that we fought growing up because I didn't quite understand it at that age, and she was talking, she mentioned that to me. She's like, because, again, she was an immigrant, her daughter was born in the US, and she's like, it allowed her to open up some of these conversations of how like, oh, you see it as this, but to me it means this. And so just like someone who, again, like this is a very lighthearted, humorous kind of romp, but at the same time, there were certain things I really wanted to get across, and she like nailed all of it. And I was just like, oh, you got it. Because like some people were like, oh, your book made me hungry. And it was surface level, right? And that's great because like I'm terrible at writing descriptions. So if I wrote a description that made you hungry, thank you. That's such a huge compliment. But if you were able to like glean why I mentioned food so much, right? Like the book is not just food porn. I talk about food constantly because it means something in Filipino culture, and it means something to my family in particular. So the people who got that, like, oh, I love you all. Thank you so much for getting what I was trying to do.
Right.
Which is hard. It's my first book. I had
A great first book.
yeah. Everyone, like your ambitions of what you're trying to achieve versus what you were able to execute. I feel everyone has very, differing levels. So if I was able to like pull off even like a little bit of what I was attempting, I'm super happy about that.
Right. And another thing about cozy mysteries is that no matter what the culture is or whatever it is that is in the story, it's there are universal themes. Like you can't read a cozy mystery and think, or you should, I think, read it and think, oh, they're like me. Their family's like me. Like, you know what I mean? There's certain things that are in a family that are going to be the same no matter what. So it's like, I don't know. You should be able to, read a cozy and be like, okay, people may look different from me, or their skin color is different, but it's like at the end of the day, mom and dad, relationships or siblings or or grandmother and daughter or whatever. It's like, just there's so many similarities,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Yeah, like the aunties. It's like that's I think another thing I've really loved learning. Again, like I've done like book clubs and like library talks, and I've had people be like, I'm Jewish, and like those aunties, like like it was like they were speaking directly to me, or someone, like I'm Puerto Rican or I'm Trinidadian, like just so many different cultures, like you said, like that you wouldn't think would have these similarities, but like there's a lot of overlap. There are more, I can't remember who registered, but like the more specific you are, the more universal it can feel, right? So like if I was writing something from my experience and the people I know that felt very Filipino to me, but because I gave so many specific details and like the way these people talked and the things that they cared about and even just what they ate, people were like, oh, like similar but different.
right.
Like there's this guy I was talking to, he's like, I'm an Italian American white dude, and like that family felt so close to mine, I can't even understand. Like it was like you were at my family table. I was like, oh, thank you, Tony, that was so those
Yeah.
kinds of connections where you're just like, you were writing, I was writing for myself, truly. I was writing the book I've always wanted to read. And I was writing for my mom, because my mom was the one who got me into cozy mysteries. She's the one who even taught me that culinary cozies existed. So I was writing for the two of us. And the fact that like there was so much overlap and so many other people could see themselves and their families. Like it's really cheesy, but you're just like, oh, wow, that's fantastic.
Yeah. So I can't believe it. We've been talking for an hour.
Oh, wow. Okay. For those of you, like, if I'm rambling, I'm very sorry. I am a lightweight. But I was rewarding myself because I got my flu shot and I hit my word count for the first time in forever. So I was telling Esme before this that I was rewarding myself.
What is that, by the way? What beer is that?
Oh, also to stay on brand. So this was, so it's called AleSmith Speedway Stout.
I like that.
It was, I originally bought this beer because I was experimenting with recipes for book 2, because it takes place in the summer. So I was like, ooh, can I make like an alcoholic like ice cream float?
Yeah.
You can. It's delicious. It didn't make it into book 2, but it might make it to a future book, because this is a collaboration with Mostra Coffee, which is a Filipino American cafe. Oh, I can't remember where they are. I want to say California, but that's because I assume everything is in California. It's a coffee and coconut stout, and it is very strong, but it is very delicious. If it's too intense to drink on its own, poured on top of like vanilla or coconut ice cream, amazing.
So have you finished? Okay, so can you tell us anything about book 3?
So I have a 3-book deal with Berkeley, and so I am in the middle of drafting book 3. And the most I can really say is that it takes place around Christmas time, and Christmas is a big deal in the Philippines. So it takes place around Christmas time, and it involves the return of someone from Lila's past, and and another thing I can say is that as part of my research, I got to visit a winery in Galena, Illinois, because it involves like a Midwestern winery. And I was like, oh, what better way than to do some hands-on research? The way that I suffer from my art that I get to write off on my taxes.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, that sounds good. And so I'm working on book 3, and I'll say it is set in the fall. So there's like I think it's like a Halloween, just probably a fall festival, like some Halloween stuff happening. And there is a spooky kind of story that's known in the town, and there may be some truth to that scary story. So, but anyway,
that's super fun. When does it come out?
Next fall.
Oh, okay. Oh, so, see, like that's one of those things where like when you write something particular to the season, because of the way schedule, like book like Homicide and Halo Halo, it's a summer story that comes out in February. So like I was writing it in summer. I got to test these recipes in summer, and it was great. And then it's gonna be February, and it comes out, and you're like, oh, look at all this like ice cream and barbecue recipe.
Right. Well, you can read it and then reread it in the summer.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today, and we finally had our conversations about witches and tea, and that we've been promising that we would do. So this has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks. And again, thanks for letting me, you said you let me like to pick your brain. I
Yeah.
really am into the way that you like how you research and like how you turn that research into like really grounded and like plot based. I was like, wow, I'm learning, and it doesn't ever feel like just like you just drop it in as a footnote. Like it's really integral to the plot, and I respect that. So like, thank you for for letting me, for being willing to talk to me about things like that.
Yeah, and definitely, offline if you need to email me or something, I'm here for you.
Awesome. Well, to all y'all who've been watching, hopefully there's people who've been watching. Thank you for joining us. I really appreciate, you taking the time to listen to me babble. Listen to Esme being awesome and so well put together. Yeah.
Okay.
Until next
Thank
time.
you. Yep.
Bye.